The morning sun cast long shadows across Mining Station 7 on the planet Kepler 442b. Tejo wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the daily ore reports. The numbers looked good. His team had pulled more rare metals from the ground this week than any other facility in the sector. Another productive day ahead, Jinwoo said, walking up to join his foreman at the observation deck. The chief engineer carried a steaming cup of coffee and looked out at the rocky landscape beyond their compound. Tejo nodded and was about to respond when something caught his eye. A dark shape moved against the purple sky. At first he thought it was a supply ship coming in early. Then the shape grew larger and he saw wings. "Dragon," Jinwoo whispered, nearly dropping his coffee cup. The massive creature circled high above their facility. Even from this distance, Tejo could see it was enormous. Dragons had not been seen in this sector for over 3 years, not since the end of the Scorching Wars. Most people thought they had all died out or fled to the outer rim worlds. "Should I sound the alarm?" Jinwoo asked, his hand moving toward the emergency button. "Wait," Tejo said quietly. Something was different about this dragon. It flew slowly, almost carefully. There was no aggression in its movements. No fire, breathing or threatening swoops toward their buildings. The dragon was beautiful despite its obvious poor condition. Its scales, which should have gleamed like polished metal, looked dull and faded. Its flight pattern seemed unsteady, as if the great beast was struggling to stay airborne. "Look at the size of that thing," Jinwoo said. "It has to be one of the ancient ones, the matriarchs from the old stories." Other workers had noticed the dragon now. A small crowd gathered on the observation deck, pointing up at the circling figure. Some reached for their communication devices to call security. Others just stood and watched in amazement. The dragon, a female from her size and bearing, continued to circle. She seemed to be studying their facility. Her massive head turned this way and that as she flew, taking in every detail of the human settlement below. "Why is she not attacking?" asked Sumin, one of the younger miners. "In all the war stories, dragons always attacked human settlements on sight." "Maybe she is just passing through," Jinwoo suggested, though he did not sound convinced. Tejo studied the dragon more carefully. Something about her behavior was strange. She was not just flying over their base, she was watching it, studying it, as if she was trying to make some kind of decision. The dragon's condition became more obvious as she flew lower. Her once magnificent scales were clearly damaged in places. Her wings, though still powerful enough to carry her massive frame, showed tears and wear. This was not a dragon at the peak of her strength. "She looks hungry," Sumin said softly. "Look how thin she is." It was true. Even from this distance, they could see that the dragon's normally robust build had become gaunt. Her ribs showed slightly through her scaled hide, and her movements lacked the fluid grace that dragons were famous for. The dragon circled lower now, coming within a few hundred meters of the facility. The workers could see her clearly. She was, indeed, one of the ancient matriarchs. Her horns were long and curved with age, and her eyes held the deep intelligence that came from centuries of life. "Should we evacuate?" asked Do-hyun, the security chief, as he joined them on the observation deck. His hand rested on his weapon, but he had not drawn it. "She has had plenty of chances to attack if that was her intention," Tejo replied. "I think she wants something else." The dragon suddenly changed her flight pattern. Instead of circling, she began to descend toward the main entrance of their facility. Her massive claws extended as she prepared to land. "Everyone inside," Do-hyun ordered, but his voice lacked real urgency. Like the others, he sensed that this was not an attack. The dragon landed with surprising gentleness for such a massive creature. Her claws scraped against the metal platform, but she was careful not to damage anything. She folded her wings and sat back on her haunches in what almost looked like a respectful posture. For several long moments, dragon and human simply stared at each other through the reinforced windows of the facility. Neither side made any threatening moves. Then the dragon did something that no human in the facility had ever seen before. She lowered her great head in what could only be described as a bow. When she raised it again, she opened her mouth and spoke. "My children." she said in halting but understandable human standard language. Her voice was deep and resonant, with the slight accent that all dragons had when speaking human tongues. They die. You have food, I ask. The simple words hit the humans like a physical blow. A dragon, one of the proud ancient matriarchs who had once ruled star systems, was asking them for help. The implications were staggering. Tae-ho stepped forward, closer to the window. The dragon's golden eyes met his own, and he saw something there that he had never expected to see in a dragon. Desperation, maternal fear. The same look he had seen in the eyes of human parents when their children were in danger. She has younglings, Jinwoo said quietly. Somewhere out there, she has babies who are starving. The dragon seemed to understand that her message had been received. She remained perfectly still, waiting for their response. There was no threat in her posture, no implied violence if they refused her request. She was simply a mother asking for help to save her children. The food processors have been running overtime, Sumin said. We have plenty of protein supplies. But she is a dragon, Do-hyun said, though his voice held more wonder than fear. They were our enemies. They burned our colonies. They killed thousands of our people. That was the war, Tae-ho said slowly. This is a mother trying to save her children. The dragon continued to wait patiently. Her great chest rose and fell slowly as she breathed. Occasionally her eyes would dart toward the horizon as if she was thinking about young ones waiting for her return. What do we do? Jinwoo asked. Tae-ho looked at the dragon for a long moment. Then he looked at his team. These were good people, hard workers who had built something meaningful on this harsh world. They were also parents themselves, many of them. They understood what it meant to fight for your children. We help her, Tae-ho said finally. Whatever else she might be, she is a mother, and her children are dying. The dragon seemed to sense his decision somehow. A sound like a sigh escaped her massive throat, and for just a moment her proud bearing cracked enough to show the desperate relief underneath. The emergency meeting room buzzed with tense voices. Word of the dragon's arrival had spread quickly through the facility. Now all the senior staff sat around the metal table debating what to do next. This is madness, Do-hyun said, slamming his fist on the table. We cannot trust a dragon. They burned our colonies to ash during the war. They killed millions of our people. Hee-jin, the colony administrator, nodded in agreement. Earth Central Command will have our heads if they find out we are harboring dragons. The peace treaty specifically forbids contact with surviving dragon populations. Tae-ho sat quietly, listening to the arguments. Through the meeting room window he could see the dragon still waiting patiently outside. She had not moved from her position by the main gate in over 2 hours. She could have attacked us by now, Jinwoo pointed out. One dragon that size could destroy half our facility before we could stop her. But she is just sitting there. Maybe it is a trap, suggested Kyung-ho, the communications officer. Maybe there are more dragons hiding nearby, waiting for us to let our guard down. I ran full sensor sweeps, said Minji, the sensor technician. There are no other dragons within 100 kilometers. She is alone. Sumin shifted in her chair. I have been watching her through the cameras. She keeps looking toward the eastern mountains. Something is out there that she cares about. Her children, Tae-ho said quietly. She said her children were dying. Even if that is true, Hyojin said, we have protocols to follow. Any contact with hostile alien species must be reported immediately to Earth Central Command. Are they hostile? Jinwoo asked. She came here asking for help, not demanding it. She could have taken our food by force, but instead she asked permission. Do-hyun stood up and walked to the window. The dragon's golden eyes seemed to follow his movement. Dragons do not ask for anything. They take what they want. This has to be some kind of trick. What if it is not? Tae-ho asked. What if she is exactly what she appears to be? A desperate mother trying to save her young. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at their foreman. Tae-ho was known for his practical thinking and careful decision-making. He was not the type to take unnecessary risks. You are seriously considering this, Jin said. It was not a question. I am considering all our options, Taeho replied. We have problems she might be able to help us solve. What kind of problems? Do-hyun asked suspiciously. Jin-woo caught on immediately. The waste processing issue. We have tons of toxic material building up from the mining operations. It is becoming a serious environmental hazard. Taeho nodded. Dragon biology can handle toxins that would kill us. Their stomach acid can break down compounds that our machines cannot process safely. If she is willing to help with waste disposal, in exchange for food, you want to make a business deal with a dragon, Hyejin said, disbelief clear in her voice. I want to find a solution that helps everyone, Taeho answered. We get rid of our waste problem, she gets food for her family. Everyone benefits, Kyung-ho shook his head. Earth Central Command will never approve this. The regulations clearly state. The regulations were written during wartime, Taeho interrupted. The war is over. Maybe it is time to think about peace. Do-hyun returned to his seat, his expression troubled. Even if we wanted to help her, how do we know she will keep her word? Dragons are proud creatures. What happens when she gets stronger and decides she does not need us anymore? Then we deal with that problem when it comes, Taeho said. Right. Now we have a chance to try something different, something that might actually work. The debate continued for another hour. Voices rose and fell as the staff argued back and forth. Some supported Taeho's proposal. Others worried about the risks. All of them knew that whatever they decided would change their lives forever. Finally, Hyejin called for a vote. All in favor of attempting negotiations with the dragon? Taeho raised his hand immediately. Jinwoo followed. Sumin and Minji raised their hands as well. After a long moment, even Kyung-ho voted yes. Do-hyun and Hyejin voted against the proposal, but they were outnumbered. Motion passes, Hyejin said grimly. God help us all. Taeho stood up. I will go talk to her. Take a security team, Do-hyun insisted, and keep the comm channel open at all times. 20 minutes later, Taeho walked through the main airlock. The dragon watched his approach with those ancient golden eyes. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her head alone was larger than most ground vehicles. You decided to speak with me, she said in her deep, accented voice. I did, Taeho replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. What is your name? The dragon seemed surprised by the question. I am called Yuna. I was once the matriarch of the Eastern Sky Clan. I am Taeho, foreman of this facility. You said, your children are dying. Yuna's great head lowered slightly. 3 hatchlings. The ecosystem collapse after the war destroyed their food sources. They have not eaten properly in many days. How do I know you are telling the truth? Without hesitation, Yuna stood and began walking toward the eastern mountains. Come, I will show you. Taeho hesitated. Following a dragon into the wilderness could be suicide. But something in her manner convinced him she was sincere. The flight to the hidden cave took only minutes on Yuna's back. Taeho had never flown on a dragon before. The experience was terrifying and magnificent at the same time. The cave was well hidden among the rocky peaks. Inside, 3 small dragons lay on beds of gathered vegetation. They were clearly younglings, no bigger than large dogs, but their condition was heartbreaking. The smallest one, barely the size of a house cat, could barely lift his head when they entered. His scales were dull and his breathing was shallow. Little Spark, Yuna said softly, nuzzling the tiny dragon with her massive snout. This is Thunderwing and Flameheart. Taeho knelt beside the smallest hatchling. Little Spark's eyes opened, revealing intelligence and pain in equal measure. The sight of the suffering youngster made Taeho's decision easy. We will help them, he said simply. Yuna's relief was visible. Her great shoulders sagged as if a massive weight had been lifted from them. What do you require in return, she asked. We have a waste disposal problem. Toxic materials that are dangerous to humans but might not be harmful to dragons. If you can help us with that. I understand, Yuna said. A fair trade. Food for my children in exchange for service to your colony. They flew back to the facility. In silence, both lost in thought about what they had just agreed to do. The real work was about to begin. 3 weeks had passed since Yuna and her hatchlings arrived at Mining Station 7. The changes were remarkable. Little Spark, who had been barely alive when Taeho first saw him, now scampered around the makeshift dragon shelter with renewed energy. His scales had regained their natural shimmer and his eyes sparkled with curiosity. Thunderwing, the eldest of the 3 hatchlings, had grown fascinated with human technology. The young dragon spent hours watching the miners work, asking endless questions about their equipment and methods. "How does the plasma cutter make such precise cuts?" Thunderwing asked Subin, the maintenance worker who had become the hatchling's unofficial human friend. Subin smiled as she adjusted the cutting torch. "It uses superheated gas to melt through the metal. The magnetic field controls the shape of the plasma stream." Thunderwing's eyes widened with understanding. "Like dragon fire, but controlled by machines instead of biology." "Exactly," Subin said. She had initially been terrified of the dragons, but their intelligence and genuine curiosity had won her over quickly. The middle hatchling, Flameheart, had discovered a different talent. She could detect ore deposits that human scanners sometimes missed. Her enhanced senses picked up mineral traces that their machines could not identify. "There is more gold in that wall," Flameheart announced during one of the morning surveys. She pointed with her small claw toward a section of rock that had already been scanned and marked as empty. Jinwoo checked his instruments again. The readings showed nothing unusual. But they had learned to trust Flameheart's abilities. When they drilled into the wall, they found a rich vein of precious metal exactly where she had indicated. "How do you do that?" Jinwoo asked the young dragon. Flameheart tilted her head thoughtfully. "I can smell the metals. Each one has a different scent. Gold smells like sunshine. Silver smells like clean water." Meanwhile, Yuna worked tirelessly in the waste processing area. The toxic materials that had been building up for months disappeared quickly under her careful attention. Her acidic breath neutralized dangerous compounds that would have required expensive equipment and weeks of processing time. "She is more efficient than our best machines," reported Dongmin, the facility's medical officer. He had been studying dragon biology with Yuna's permission, fascinated by their natural resistance to radiation and toxins. "Dragon metabolism is incredible," Dongmin explained to Taeho during one of their daily briefings. "They can process substances that would kill humans instantly. Their cellular structure actually becomes stronger when exposed to certain toxins." "Any practical applications for us?" Taeho asked. "Potentially huge ones. If we can understand how their biology works, we might develop treatments for radiation poisoning and toxic exposure. Diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries could become manageable." Dongmin had approached Yuna about voluntary medical cooperation. To his surprise, the dragon matriarch had agreed immediately. "Knowledge shared makes both species stronger," Yuna had told him. "I have lived for 8 centuries. I have seen what happens when species refuse to learn from each other." The daily routine at the mining station had evolved to accommodate their new residents. Mornings began with Yuna processing the previous day's toxic waste, while her hatchlings helped with various tasks around the facility. The young dragon's keen senses and natural intelligence made them valuable assistants. Du Hyun, despite his initial opposition, had grudgingly admitted that the arrangement was working well. "Production is up 30% since they arrived," he reported to Taeho. "Waste processing time has been cut by 80%, and we have not had a single safety incident." The security chief paused, then added, "The hatchlings are actually quite charming. Little Spark helped me repair a communications array yesterday. His small size allowed him to reach components that would have required dismantling half the equipment. Even Heejin, the colony administrator, had begun to see the benefits." "The efficiency reports are remarkable," she admitted. "If Earth Central Command saw these numbers, they might actually approve of what we are doing here." But it was the small, everyday interactions that truly showed how much had changed. Subin often found herself eating lunch with the hatchlings, sharing stories about human customs while they taught her about dragon traditions. In the old days, Thunderwing explained one afternoon. Young dragons would compete to see who could fly the highest. The winner got to choose the best sleeping spot in the nest. Human children have similar competitions, Subin replied. We race to see who is fastest or have contests to see who can solve puzzles quickest. Little Spark, who was still too young to fly properly, listened to these stories with wide eyes. Maybe someday human children and dragon children could compete together, he suggested innocently. The idea seemed impossible, but Subin found herself smiling at the thought. Maybe they could, she said. Yuna watched these interactions with quiet satisfaction. Her children were not just surviving, they were thriving. They were learning about the wider galaxy and forming friendships she had never thought possible. One evening, as the twin suns set over the mining facility, Teho found Yuna perched on a rocky outcropping overlooking the compound. The dragon, Matriarch, was gazing at the lights of the facility, where humans and dragons worked side by side. Regrets? Teho asked, joining her on the ridge. Yuna considered the question carefully. I regret the years of pride that kept me from seeing what was possible. Dragons have always believed we were superior to other species. We thought cooperation was weakness. She gestured toward the facility with one massive claw. Your people have shown me that cooperation is strength. Together we accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. The war left deep wounds on both sides, Teho observed. War is the failure of imagination, Yuna replied. It is easier to destroy than to build, easier to hate than to understand. What we have created here required courage from all of us. Below them, Little Spark was playing with a ball that Subin had given him. The tiny dragon chased the rolling sphere with pure joy, his laughter echoing off the canyon walls. He has never known the old ways, Yuna said softly. To him, humans are not enemies. They are friends who helped save his life. Maybe that is how it should be, Teho said. Maybe the next generation will do better than ours did. Thunderwing's voice drifted up from the facility as he helped Jinwoo with equipment maintenance. Flameheart was showing Dongmin how to identify mineral traces using scent markers. The sounds of cooperation and friendship filled the evening. I have lived for 8 centuries, Yuna said finally. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems. But I have never seen anything as remarkable as what is happening here. Teho nodded, watching. His people work alongside their former enemies. Neither have I. The transport ship arrived without warning on a cloudy morning. Teho watched from the observation deck as the sleek vessel settled onto the landing pad. The corporate markings on its hull sent a chill down his spine. Earth Central Command, Jinwoo said quietly, joining his foreman at the window. This is not a routine inspection. Wu Jin stepped off the ship first. The inspector was a thin man in an expensive suit, completely out of place on the rough mining world. Behind him came Mi Young, a xenobiology specialist whose official mission was to study alien life forms. Hide the hatchlings, Teho ordered quickly. Get them to the back caves now. Subin ran to gather the young dragons while Yuna watched from her position near the waste processing facility. The dragon matriarch's ancient eyes missed nothing. She could sense danger approaching. Welcome to Mining Station 7, Teho said, as he met the visitors at the airlock. We were not expecting an inspection. Routine evaluations are no longer routine when they involve unauthorized alien contact, Wu Jin replied coldly. He pulled out a data tablet and began reading. Reports indicate that this facility has been harboring dragons in direct violation of Earth Central Command regulations. We have been cooperating with local wildlife to improve operational efficiency, Teho said carefully. Mi Young smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. I am here to study these local wildlife specimens, for scientific purposes, of course. The inspection team spent the morning reviewing files and interviewing staff. Most of the miners gave cautious answers, trying to protect their dragon co-workers without directly lying to the investigators. Do-hyun found himself in an impossible position. As security chief, he was supposed to report any violations of regulations. But he had grown to respect Yuna and care for the hatchlings. The dragons have been cooperative, he told Wu Jin during his interview. They have not threatened our operations or personnel. Dragons killed millions of humans during the Scorching Wars, Wu Jin reminded him. They are classified as hostile alien combatants. Any contact is forbidden. The war ended 3 years ago, Do Hyun replied. Maybe it is time to consider peace. Wu Jin made notes on his tablet. His expression suggested that Do Hyun had just confessed to treason. By afternoon, it became clear that the inspection was actually a trap. Mi Young had brought scanning equipment that could detect dragon biology from several kilometers away. She knew exactly where Yuna and the hatchlings were located. Bring them in, Wu Jin ordered his security team. All dragons are to be detained, for comprehensive study. Taeho stepped forward. They are under my protection. We have an agreement. Your agreement is worthless, Wu Jin said. You have no authority to negotiate with hostile aliens. The encrypted communication came through, on Wu Jin's personal device. Taeho could hear parts of the conversation through the thin walls of the command center. Chairman Kang wants them alive, a voice said through the speaker. The military applications are too valuable to risk. Dragon toxin resistance could create super soldiers. Their biological capabilities could revolutionize weapons development. Taeho felt sick. This was not about safety or regulations. This was about turning Yuna and her children into weapons. Corporate security forces began surrounding the dragon shelter. They carried nets and tranquilizer weapons designed for large creatures. Their orders were clear. Capture the dragons by any means necessary. Yuna emerged from the waste processing facility, her massive form moving with deadly grace. She had heard enough to understand what was happening. Her children were in danger. Stand down, Wu Jin called out through a megaphone. Surrender peacefully and no one will be harmed. Yuna's golden eyes blazed with ancient fury. For the first time since her arrival, she looked every inch the terrifying predator that had once dominated star systems. Her wings spread wide, casting shadows over the entire facility. My children are not weapons, she said, her voice carrying across the compound. They are not test subjects. They are living beings who have done nothing but help your people. Dragons are property of Earth Central. Command under wartime salvage laws, Mi Young announced. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. Taeho realized that Yuna could easily escape. She could fly away and leave the humans to face whatever punishment Earth Central Command had planned. But her children were still recovering from their ordeal. They could not fly long distances yet. The dragon matriarch was trapped by her love for her young. I could destroy this entire facility before your weapons could stop me, Yuna said calmly. But I will not harm those who showed me kindness. She began to fold her wings, preparing to surrender herself to protect her children and the humans who had helped them. No, Taeho said firmly. He walked out into the open space between Yuna and the corporate forces. She stays. They all stay. Wu Jin stared at the human foreman in disbelief. You are disobeying a direct order from Earth Central Command. That is treason. Then I guess I am a traitor, Taeho replied. Jin Woo joined his foreman in the open space. Then Subin appeared, standing between the corporate forces and the dragon shelter. One by one, the other miners emerged from their positions. Even Do Hyun, despite his oath to follow regulations, drew his weapon and pointed it at the corporate security team instead of the dragons. What are you doing? Wu Jin demanded. Protecting our people, Do Hyun said simply. All of our people. The corporate forces were outnumbered, but they had superior weapons and training. The standoff could turn deadly very quickly. Little Spark peeked out from the shelter entrance, his small form trembling with fear. Thunderwing and Flameheart flanked their youngest brother, ready to protect him with their lives. You are all under arrest, Wu Jin announced. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately. Captain Nam, the leader of the corporate security forces, raised his weapon. You have 10 seconds to comply. Yuna looked at the humans who were risking everything to protect her family. These people, whom her species had considered inferior, were willing to sacrifice their lives for creatures they had once called enemies. I will not let you die for me, she told Teho quietly. We made a deal, Teho replied without taking his eyes off the corporate forces. Humans honor their agreements. The 10 seconds passed in tense silence. Captain Nam's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. Then a shadow passed over the facility. Everyone looked up to see a massive dragon descending from the clouds. This one was even larger than Yuna, her scales silver with age and wisdom. Behind her flew 3 more adult dragons, their wings blocking out the sun. Ancient One, Yuna whispered in recognition. The elder dragon landed with earth-shaking force just outside the corporate perimeter. Her presence was so overwhelming that several of the security forces took involuntary steps backward. I am the Ancient One, she announced in perfect human standard language. Eldest of the surviving dragon clans, I come to request sanctuary, under the same terms offered to my sister Yuna. The situation had just become far more complicated. 6 months after the corporate crisis, Mining Station 7 had become the most famous facility in the known galaxy. Delegations from dozens of worlds arrived weekly to study the successful human-dragon partnership. The facility itself had grown dramatically. New buildings designed to accommodate both species rose from the rocky ground. Dragon perches were integrated with human walkways. Shared dining areas allowed both species to eat together comfortably. Teho stood in his new office, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on the expanded dragon habitat. The title on his door now read, Director of Interspecies Operations, a position that had been created specifically for him by the United Colonies Council. The council approved funding for 3 more facilities, Hyejin reported, entering with a stack of authorization documents. She had been promoted to regional administrator and was now overseeing the expansion program. Which worlds? Teho asked. Kepler 438b, Proxima Centauri C, and Wolf 359b. All have existing mining operations and environmental challenges that dragons could help solve. Jin Wu knocked on the office doorframe. The new housing units are ready for inspection. The dragons helped with the construction. Their precision work on the support beams is incredible. Through the office window, Teho could see little Spark playing with a group of human children who had arrived with their families. The tiny dragon, now fully healthy and energetic, chased a ball while the children laughed with delight. Thunderwing had become Jin Wu's official apprentice, learning advanced engineering techniques while contributing dragon perspective to human technology. His latest project involved developing new mining equipment that combined human precision with dragon sensory capabilities. Flameheart worked closely with Dongmin in the medical research division. Her ability to detect biological changes had led to breakthrough developments in early disease detection. Treatments that had once seemed impossible were now becoming reality. How are the new arrivals settling in? Teho asked. Better than expected, Hyejin replied. The Ancient One has been an excellent ambassador. She has convinced 12 other dragon families to join the program. The Ancient One had indeed proven invaluable. Her age and wisdom commanded respect from both species. She spent much of her time mediating disputes and helping establish protocols for interspecies cooperation. Subin appeared in the doorway, carrying a data tablet. Director Park wants to schedule a meeting about the education program. Director Park had arrived the previous month to establish the first integrated school for human and dragon children. The concept was revolutionary. Young members of both species learning together from the beginning. What did the test results show? Teho asked. Mixed species learning groups perform 40% better than single species groups, Subin reported excitedly. Dragon hatchlings excel at pattern recognition and environmental awareness. Human children are better at abstract mathematics and language skills. Together they solve problems that neither group could handle alone. Doohyun entered the office, his security chief uniform now modified with dragon-friendly design elements. The ceremonial welcoming for the new families is ready. Ambassador Lee should be arriving within the hour. Ambassador Lee had become a regular visitor to the facility. Her reports to the United Colonies Council had been instrumental in establishing official policies for human-dragon cooperation. The ceremony took place in the main plaza, a new space designed to accommodate large gatherings of both species. 5 dragon families totaling 16 individuals were being formally welcomed to the facility. Yuna served as the host for the dragon delegation. Her transformation over the past months had been remarkable. The desperate, starving matriarch had become a confident leader, helping other dragon families adapt to cooperative living. "Welcome to our shared home," she said to the new arrivals. "Here the pride of dragons lies not in dominion but in partnership." Little Spark had grown considerably, though he was still the smallest of the hatchlings. He approached the new dragon, children with excitement, eager to show them around their new home. "This is the workshop where Thunderwing learns to build things," he explained to a particularly shy young dragon. "And this is where Flameheart helps the humans understand how bodies work." The integration had not been without challenges. Cultural differences between species sometimes led to misunderstandings. Dragons had different concepts of personal space and social hierarchy than humans, but each problem had been solved through patient communication and mutual respect. One of the most significant developments was the establishment of the first interspecies trade agreements. Dragon colonies on other worlds began trading their services for human technology and food supplies. What had started as a desperate plea for help had evolved into a galaxy-wide economic partnership. "The preliminary reports from the Outer Rim are encouraging," Ambassador Lee told the Assembly. 3 previously uninhabitable worlds have been successfully colonized using dragon environmental modification techniques. The ceremony concluded with the traditional exchange of gifts. Human families presented the dragon newcomers with specially crafted perches and comfortable bedding. The dragons offered their services in waste processing and mineral detection. As the sun set over the expanded facility, Taeho found himself once again standing on the observation ridge with Yuna. But this time, they were not alone. The Ancient One joined them along with several other dragons and humans. "Do you ever regret it?" asked Director Park. "Taking that first risk with Yuna and her children?" Taeho looked out over the bustling facility. Human and dragon children played together in the communal areas. Adult members of both species worked side by side on dozens of projects. The sounds of cooperation and friendship filled the evening air. "Never," he said simply. A new sound caught their attention. From one of the dragon nesting areas came the soft chirping of hatchlings. Yuna's second clutch of eggs had hatched the previous week, producing 4 healthy babies. One of the new hatchlings, a female they had named Hope's Wing, stumbled out of the nesting area on unsteady legs. She looked around with wonder at the mixed community that surrounded her. To Hope's Wing, this was not remarkable. This was simply how the world worked. Humans and dragons lived together, worked together, and cared for each other's children. The idea that the 2 species had once been enemies would seem absurd to her generation. "She will never know the old hatreds," the Ancient One observed. "To her, humans are not former enemies. They are simply part of her family." Subin scooped up the tiny hatchling, who chirped contentedly in her arms. "Hello, little Hope. Welcome to your world." Thunderwing flew overhead, practicing aerial maneuvers with a group of human children riding in a specially designed harness system. Their laughter echoed off the canyon walls as they soared through the evening sky. "The first generation of true cooperation," Yuna said softly. "They will build things we cannot even imagine." As if to prove her point, Flameheart emerged from the medical center with exciting news. "Dr. Dongmin says our research has led to a cure for Tau syndrome. Thousands of humans will live longer, healthier lives because of what we discovered together." Little Spark, now acting as official greeter for new arrivals, bounded over to the group. "The new dragons want to know if they can help with the construction project tomorrow. They are very excited about building their first human-style dwelling." "Of course they can," Taeho said. "Everyone contributes according to their abilities." The Ancient One spread her massive wings, preparing for her evening flight. "I have lived for over 1,000 years," she said. "I have seen the rise and fall of empires. I have witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems." She looked at the thriving community below, where former enemies had become family. "But I have never seen anything as beautiful as what we have built here. This is not just survival. This is evolution. Both our species have become something greater than we were alone. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, the sounds of the mixed community continued. Dragons hummed ancient lullabies while human parents tucked their children into bed. Night shift workers, both human and dragon, began their duties with easy cooperation born of months of practice. Hope's wing fell asleep in Subin's arms, dreaming perhaps of a future where cooperation between species was not remarkable, but natural. A future where the question was not whether different beings could work together, but what amazing things they could accomplish when they did. The story that had begun with a desperate mother's plea for help had become something much larger. It had become proof that enemies could become friends, that pride could give way to wisdom, and that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships created the most beautiful results. In the distance, Thunderwing's voice could be heard explaining some technical concept to his human classmates. Flameheart was sharing dragon folklore with fascinated human listeners. Little Spark was planning tomorrow's games with his mixed species playmates. The future had arrived, and it was more wonderful than anyone had dared to hope. The arrival of the Ancient One changed everything. The elder dragon was massive beyond imagination, her silver scales telling the story of over 1,000 years of life. The 3 adult dragons who accompanied her took positions around the facility, creating a protective circle. Captain Nam and his corporate security forces found themselves surrounded and outnumbered by creatures who could incinerate them without effort. But their orders remained the same: capture the dragons alive for military research. This complicates matters, Wu Jin said into his communication device. We now have 5 adult dragons and 3 hatchlings, requesting immediate reinforcement. The Ancient One's massive head turned toward the inspector. Her golden eyes, even older and wiser than Yuna's, seemed to see through his corporate facade to the greed beneath. I have lived through the rise and fall of civilizations, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. I have seen species destroy themselves through hatred and fear. I had hoped that humans might be different. Dragons are classified as hostile combatants, Wu Jin replied, trying to maintain his authority despite the overwhelming presence surrounding him. Earth Central Command has jurisdiction over all dragon populations. We were never your subjects, the Ancient One said calmly. We were your equals in war. Now we seek to become your partners in peace. Mi Young raised her scanning equipment, trying to gather biological data on the newly arrived dragons. Remarkable, she murmured. The cellular structure is even more advanced than our models predicted. Jae Sung, one of the younger miners, had been working frantically at his communication station. While everyone focused on the standoff, he managed to establish contact with other mining facilities and colonial networks. I am broadcasting everything, he announced. The whole sector can see what is happening here. Wu Jin spun around. Shut down that transmission immediately. Cannot do that, Jae Sung replied. The truth needs to be told. The live feed showed corporate forces threatening peaceful dragons who had been cooperating with human colonists. It showed dragons protecting human children and humans standing up to protect dragon families. The images spread rapidly across the colonial communication networks. Within hours, the story was being viewed on dozens of worlds. Public opinion began to shift as people saw the reality of human-dragon cooperation. Sir, Captain Nam said quietly to Wu Jin, we are receiving messages from Earth Central Command. They want us to minimize public exposure. But it was too late for that. The footage of Little Spark playing with human children had already gone viral. People across human space were seeing dragons as something other than monsters for the first time. The crisis reached its peak when corporate reinforcements attempted to deploy sleep gas to subdue the dragons. They had underestimated both dragon physiology and human determination. Yuna's acidic breath neutralized the gas instantly, while the human miners activated their emergency air filters. The attack failed completely and only made the dragons more defensive. Little Spark, frightened by the gas attack, breathed his first flame in defense of Subin, who had thrown herself over him to protect him from the chemicals. The tiny jet of fire was barely larger than a candle flame, but it melted the gas canister and sent the corporate forces scrambling. The image of a baby dragon protecting a human went viral across the galaxy within minutes. This is getting out of control, Mi-young said nervously. Public sentiment is turning against us. Thunderwing had used his intelligence to help Jinwoo send detailed efficiency reports to other mining operations. The data showed dramatically improved productivity and safety records since the dragons arrived. Colony administrators on other worlds began asking why they could not have similar arrangements with any surviving dragon populations. Flame hearts. Ability to locate mineral deposits had led to the discovery of rare element veins worth millions of credits. Economic analysts began calculating the potential benefits of human-dragon cooperation. The numbers do not lie, reported a financial news service. Facilities with dragon partnerships show profit increases of over 40%. Chairman Kang's voice came through Wu Jin's encrypted communicator, angry and demanding. Control the situation. The military contracts depend on exclusive access to dragon biology. But the situation was beyond anyone's control now. The United Colonies Council had been flooded with messages supporting the mining station's dragon partnership. Political pressure was building to investigate the corporate attempt to weaponize dragons. The Ancient One watched the chaos with ancient patience. She had seen empires rise and fall on the tides of public opinion. She knew that the moment had come to speak directly to the human people. I request communication access to your colonial networks, she said to Jae Sung. The young miner looked at Tai-ho, who nodded permission. Within minutes, the Ancient One's image was being broadcast across human space. Her voice, carrying the wisdom of millennia, spoke directly to billions of humans. My people made mistakes during the war, she said. We allowed pride to blind us to possibilities for peace. We thought strength meant dominance over others. Her massive head turned to look at the human miners standing protectively around the dragon hatchlings. These humans have shown us a different kind of strength. The strength to forgive former enemies. The strength to offer help to those in need. The strength to risk everything to protect the innocent. The Ancient One's golden gaze fixed on the camera. Dragons have always been survivors. We adapt to new realities. The old ways of conquest and dominance led only to mutual destruction. It is time for both our species to choose cooperation over conflict. The broadcast ended with images of humans and dragons working side by side at Mining Station 7. The contrast with the corporate forces trying to capture peaceful dragons could not have been clearer. Ambassador Lee arrived 6 hours later aboard a United Colonies Council ship. Her arrival marked the beginning of the end for the corporate operation. By order of the United Colonies Council, she announced, all military research on dragon biology is suspended pending full investigation. The dragons of Mining Station 7 are granted protected status as diplomatic representatives of their species. Wu Jin and his team were ordered to return to Earth for questioning about unauthorized military research programs. Mi-young's equipment was confiscated as evidence of illegal experimentation. Captain Nam and his security forces stood down, their weapons powering down as they received new orders from their superiors. This is not over, Wu Jin said to Tai-ho as he prepared to leave. Corporate interests will not be ignored. Maybe not, Tai-ho replied. But the people have spoken, and they have chosen cooperation over exploitation. As the corporate ships departed, Yuna found herself standing beside the Ancient One, watching the humans celebrate their victory. You were right to trust them, the Ancient One said quietly. They are worthy partners. Little Spark emerged from the shelter, his fear finally overcome by curiosity. He approached the massive elder dragon with the fearless innocence of youth. Are you really 1,000 years old? He asked. The Ancient One's expression softened. Older than that, little one. Old enough to know that what we have built here is something new. Something better than what came before. Thunderwing and Flameheart joined their brother gathering around the elder dragon to hear stories of the old days. But now those stories served as lessons about what to avoid, rather than models to follow. The stand had been successful. Dragons and humans had faced down corporate greed together and emerged, stronger for it.